Now I want to go back for a moment to the question, how do you find unconsciousness in your life? And I found two interesting examples that I'd like to invite you to play with. They're very simple. I invite you to do this while I'm talking about it. One of the places where we get in trouble is we really believe our brain. Now, why would you get in trouble? Because the brain is only a mechanism. It doesn't hold the entire truth. It is not the be-all and end-all of the universal reality. It is only our mind. So when the brain is telling us things and we believe it without thinking, we allow the brain to set the stage. We allow the paradigms of the brain to be the primary interpreter of the situation. Now that sounds very conceptual and theoretical, but I'm going to show you a little way to see that. What I'm going to invite you to do is to cover one eye with your hand and take a finger on the other hand and very gently push on your eyeball. Obviously very gently. Don't do this if you're driving and listening to this tape. But just push gently on the corner of your eye until there's a distortion in what you see. I'm going to take a breath for a second and let you try that. So what you're doing is you're changing the shape of the eye and distorting it so that it looks like the room goes cockeyed for a second. Now, when you do that, and you might want to do it 2 or 3 times as I talk through this, when you do that, if you listen to what your brain says, your brain says the room moved. The brain does not say, ooh, that's the eyeball squishing. The brain's perception is that something has changed. And the reason for that, and what I'm describing here, is one example of how the brain thinks and the paradigms it uses. The brain, it never occurs to the brain that your eye is being affected by something. And the brain is basing this assumption on the fact that eyes are buried deep in our head, and very, very seldom, unless you are doing something deliberately, such as touching the corner of the eye with your finger, is the eye distorted. So the brain comes to rely upon the images that the eye sees to give it information. So when you close one eye and look with the other and distort the shape of the eye so that the room twitches, there is some portion of your brain that thinks the room moved. Now, I know that that's a very tiny example, but a lot of the work that we do on spirituality is, relatively speaking, small, petty, tiny, minute details where we have made assumptions in our life that are not valid. So that's an example of where the brain has a basis for making decisions that is right 99.99% of the time, but doesn't include the one time when you fool with your own eye. So the brain is a wonderful tool, works well, catches a lot of things, but it's still working from paradigms. Now, hoping that you still want to play a little bit with me, I have another one for you. Again, don't do this if you're driving because we could get in trouble. But I got this through one of those terrible email forwards, and sometimes they're actually useful. I hate to admit it because people send me more, but sometimes they're useful. And this little trick was discovered by a neurologist. Don't know the gentleman's name, would love to give him credit. And what it involves is putting one leg, your right leg, seems to be important that it's the right leg. Putting the right leg forward and using your toe and moving at the ankle, making clockwise circles with your right foot. And then taking your left hand index finger and in the air in front of you, writing the letter 6. Now, you may not be able to do this exercise while you're listening to me because it's a little bit of pat your head and rub your tummy. But if you try it later on, you'll find that your foot changes direction. Now, I don't know what this means to the neurologist, and I wish I knew more. I love reading things like this and finding out their history, but this is all I've got. And you can decide all you want that you're going to keep that foot moving clockwise, but it won't. And this impressed me perhaps more than other silly games like this, because it was brought forward by a neurologist, and I would guess that there's some neurological thing going on that between the right foot and the left hand, you can't tell the wiring, no, don't do that. Now, I bring that up because it is difficult for a grown adult to believe that they cannot control how their foot moves. And yet, apparently, there's some hardwiring connection in our body that he doesn't say that no one can, but that's the implication, that this is hardwired, that hardly anyone, I'll use that, can stop their foot from reversing. If you do not have incontrovertible evidence like that, I hope you can see where you might decide to interpret things differently than what may be actually happening. In other words, life is not as simple as a neurological experiment. When you press on your eye, if you're not careful, your brain can say, oh, I know this trick. You can't fool me. I'll agree that the eye is moving. You may have to do it several times before you realize that the first feeling is that the room is moving. And then the realization comes, oh, that's because I'm moving my eye. And when we're talking about self-analysis of unconscious behavior patterns, this may be the level of detail that you need to work with. I find that exciting. I find it exciting because it is there. The evidence is going to come forward. And the work is only to become aware of discrepancies, to become aware that we didn't mean that, but we did it anyway, to bring the facts in and to look at them, and we can become aware of unconscious forces. Now, I wanted to give two cute examples because I'm going to go a little bit further, and it may not be as easy for you to see these examples as it is for you to see a simple trick of the body.